she mentioned, she called him her colleague. They first met at a work event at the end of 2016, about 7 months before this important event. Interestingly, he holds a similar position in another branch of the same company, located about 200 miles away from us. Initially, they communicated by email, mainly about work. After exchanging numbers, she emphasized that, given his extensive experience in this position, her only intention was to get professional advice and share tips. It was her recent promotion to a similar position that triggered more personal topics in their conversation, and he began to flirt, to which she willingly reciprocated. Realizing the need for privacy, he suggested moving their communication to an encrypted messaging app. From my perspective, this man seemed to have a tendency to pursue married women, which was unpleasant to me. The initial messages were deleted, so I never saw them, but the rest of their conversation was saved in the messaging app they used. When I said I wanted to watch, she resisted and tried to talk me out of it emotionally. At the same time, I reminded her that I was ready to leave if she wasn't completely honest with me. Eventually, she reluctantly opened the app and handed it to me, curling up with her head in her lap. The content of the messages was explicit, filled with provocative photos and videos. Both participants were excited about an upcoming summer work event where they planned to spend 2 nights in a hotel, detailing shockingly graphic messages about what they intended to do. Continuing to read, my thoughts went back to the earlier video. I asked if she had sent him the video, and in response, she burst into tears. Trying to gather more information, I scrolled through the conversation until I found a video. To my horror, they were exchanging numerous notes discussing him. He expressed pleasure from indulging in pleasure while watching the video, and she replied that it turns her on. This revelation deeply offended me. It wasn't just about sharing a faithful video, but also emotional betrayal. Participating in such a vulnerable action was completely unfamiliar to me. Let me clarify that I've never shared explicit photos, let alone sent them. The idea of sharing such an unfaithful picture, especially with someone she was involved with, terrified me. However, they managed to involve me in their past relationships, even though I never willingly participated. Maybe not intentionally, but it seemed so. Now, thinking about it, I realize with deep regret that I was just her replacement and an equal participant in that video. I realized that all those worries and experiences I expected were directed solely for his benefit, not mine. So I made the difficult decision to leave and informed her about my desire to divorce. Despite her moving out, she insisted on reconciling. To get a grip on the situation, I consulted with several divorce lawyers who informed me that a settlement agreement would inevitably lead to a significant decrease in my financial well-being and joint custody of our child. After carefully studying my financial capabilities and having numerous conversations with my parents, I came to this conclusion. Turning to my colleague for advice and trusting my friends, I concluded that divorce is the most appropriate option. I believed that I could overcome financial difficulties reasonably soon, allowing me to retire as planned. Additionally, I believed that my daughter's well-being would be better if she had contented parents, even if they were no longer married. When I finally reached out to my wife to tell her about my decision to start divorce proceedings, she surprised me by offering a deal. She suggested a year-long trial separation, during which we would have time to cool down and restore the relationship. After seeking advice from a marriage counselor, I reconsidered the situation. If I chose to move on, the consultant would be ready to facilitate the divorce process, providing equal custody of the child and a more favorable distribution of property. After careful consideration, I agreed to this decision. I made it clear to my wife that I intended to approach our separation as if I were single. Given the length of our relationship and my limited experience when we first started dating, I felt that I needed to gain more life experience to make an informed decision about our future. I expressed my dissatisfaction with her behavior and made it clear that if she considered it unfair or felt uncomfortable in such an unequal position, then we could think about divorce. Although it was unpleasant for her, she understood my point of view and eventually agreed. Soon after, I started dating other women, including a romantic relationship with a woman I met at the gym that lasted several months. It seems that my wife doubted the sincerity of our relationship. She didn't handle the situation properly. During our first marriage consultation, we introduced ourselves and discussed our circumstances. The marriage counselor asked about my dating status, to which I replied affirmatively. In response, my wife made the following remark: "I don't see the point in us going through this if you're dating other women." After the session, I agreed with her opinion and expressed the belief that marriage counseling might not be a useful idea. She subsequently apologized and retracted her words. I told her we could revisit the idea later. Over the next few months, she periodically, often late at night, sent me messages asking why I had treated her this way and whether I had not punished her properly. After about a year and a half, I began to consider the possibility of reconciliation. We successfully engaged in co-parenting and spent time with our daughter as one family. Besides, the dates were incredibly dull. Perhaps it was premature, but disappointment overwhelmed me. After numerous dates and even second and third dates, I realized that I couldn't imagine anything more than casual relationships with the women I dated. As a result, having been divorced for more than a year, I decided to end my dating. This choice allowed me to spend more time reconnecting with my wife. In early 2019, I asked her to move in with us to rebuild our family, bringing great joy to my daughter. Our relationship restoration centered around our shared commitment to raising our child. As a mother, I trust her implicitly. She's excellent, and I have full confidence in her ability to make sensible financial and medical decisions on my behalf if needed. However, our romantic love hasn't rekindled, and unfortunately, I no longer feel a deep sense of gratitude for having her in my life. While some aspects of our relationship aren't ideal, it doesn't diminish my overall happiness. I've held on to hope for a long time, but it's been over 4 years since our reconciliation, and it seems things won't get much better. Nevertheless, I'm content fulfilling the roles of a responsible partner and devoted father daily. This used to suit me well, but recent events brought discord into our relationship, leaving me feeling depressed and lost after the betrayal. I'm really counting on the support of others. My best friend and I have been inseparable since our teenage years, attending all significant events together, from proms to weddings and even the birth of our children. Despite the busy life, we managed to find time for joint sports several times a week. During the tough times of separation from my wife, he provided support, checking on me daily and ensuring I took care of myself. He even monitored my drinks intake. I tried not to succumb to excessive drinking and to keep my composure until I regained stability in my life. But after I took over the organization of Thanksgiving last year, the situation began to change. He became distant, often canceled our classes at the gym, and generally avoided communication. At first, I attributed this behavior to being busy during the holiday season, given the family and work responsibilities that usually consume all of us at this time. From time to time, I contacted him by SMS to find out how he was doing, but his answers usually came down to short messages or a simple thumbs-up emoji. I didn't attach much importance to this. Perhaps he just needed personal space. I tried to communicate with him and convince him of my sincere care and support. But in January, my wife confronted me with the fact that I had not informed her about the divorce of my closest friend and his wife. I was completely unaware of the situation she was talking about. As it turned out, my friend's wife turned to my wife with a request to help her overcome infidelity and convince her of the need to work on their marriage. In response, my wife just offered her typical advice. She stressed the importance of qualities such as transparency, patience, and respect, and even advised me to read something. But I was struck by his reaction to someone else's situation. Despite the obvious irony in her answer, I refrained from expressing my thoughts. It was very sad for me to watch the pain they caused. Like everyone else, I knew about the difficulties they faced and could not understand why they did not turn to me for support. After all, this man gave me incredible support during my wife's infidelity, and I thought he should have known that I would never condemn him. Driven by my anxiety, I started reaching out to him, inviting him to the gym or for a drink, hoping to find solace. We were engaged, for example, in a game of disc golf, but it took a long time to persuade him. When we met, his attitude towards me was far from warm. He seemed terse and unfriendly, but as we talked, he gradually began to tell his story. He said that at some point, his wife told him that they should live separately, as I did. She even suggested that extramarital affairs are common in many marriages. His wife's disbelief in his fidelity led to the fact that he began to think about divorce. It was obvious that he partially blamed me for the current situation. The pain inflicted on me was as sharp as a blade. The mere thought that I had played some role, even the most insignificant, in the cruel fate of my friend's betrayal, caused almost as much pain as the discovery of my wife's infidelity. Did my decision to stay with my wife somehow affect this outcome? Does forgiving infidelity mean that it becomes more tolerable? Is there anything I can do to help my friend? I tried to explain why I decided to stay, emphasizing that our relationship had become purely practical. Our marriage no longer resembled what it was before. However, his indifference didn't confuse me. I believe he has every right to be angry, and I sympathize with him. The recent incident reopened old emotional wounds, significantly worsening my relationship with my wife. It's been 2 months since our last faithful moment, and even making eye contact or engaging in physical touch has become challenging for me. The thought of divorce has started crossing my mind again, but fortunately, my daughter is grown up now and can handle the potential consequences. I think she's reached an age where she can express her wishes and opinions about our family situation. I have complete confidence in my wife's ability to be a great co-parent, irrespective of our relationship status. I feel a strong sense of guilt and depression about how much we've regressed, and I'm somewhat disgusted by my own actions. Have any of you ever felt this overwhelming sense of guilt, especially at such an advanced stage? How did you cope with it? Logically, I understand I'm not to blame, but his criticism puts a lot of pressure on my conscience. I can't support him the way he once supported me. I'm genuinely at a loss about what to do. Any advice or words of support would be greatly appreciated. I can't help but wonder if cheating has permanently damaged the part of me seeking connection and closeness. After our conversation, I felt emptiness and the absence of any real essence. I remember lying in bed one weekend, contemplating the lack of emotions I should be feeling. Despite being with an amazing woman, experiencing a tender and charming moment, an inexplicable emptiness prevailed within me. I longed for the deep connection and closeness my wife and I once had, but it never surfaced. This inability to feel burdened me with guilt and deep self-doubt. When my wife and I reconciled, I hoped to regain the deep satisfaction and connection we once shared. Despite the physical aspect being enjoyable, there's no true satisfaction in it. It feels like I'm just going through the motions and not experiencing a genuine connection with my wife. Since I last expressed my concerns, there has been some improvement in our relationship. We've had several conversations, and I must commend my wife for her insight and intelligence in understanding what was bothering me. I questioned why she felt entitled to condemn my friend's wife for behaving similarly to herself. She adamantly denied the similarity, claiming Mike's wife had repeatedly cheated while she had never done so. It was clear she had convinced herself she never intended to cheat with a third person. I reminded her of our previous conversations, to which she replied something like this: "I made a big mistake and allowed myself to get carried away by the moment, even though I had no intention of doing anything. She just doesn't get it, or maybe I don't understand it. On one hand, I recognize our situation could have been worse, but on the other, the guilt still weighs on me. At least we're communicating now. Some people suggested psychotherapy, but we never went to marriage counseling after the first session. However, my wife attended individual therapy sessions during our separation. My family has faced challenges with mental health treatment, and my grandmother's mistreatment by mental health professionals during a less understanding era left a lasting impact on our perception. This has become a significant obstacle for me in seeking help for myself, and I'm unsure how to overcome it. Regarding Mike, I decided to give him the space, as you all recommended. I reached out to him through text, expressing my support, apologizing for his current difficulties, and assuring him of my presence and support. In response, he gave me a thumbs up, indicating he needed my help. I can't help but feel sorry for him and would like to offer support. I'm grateful to all of you for being an umbrella for me, because I can't share these things with anyone in my life. They either condemn me or condemn my wife, which isn't good for anyone. I would greatly appreciate any advice or words of support." On another note, tonight was an unexpected development. For the first time since the new year and the incident with Mike and his wife after finishing work, she drank several glasses of wine. From the start, she exuded undeniable beauty that has always captivated me. Lately, my desire for physical release has been increasing rapidly. Complicating matters, her infidelity revealed that I'm not an integral part of her past life. Perhaps I'm just a preference, not an absolute necessity, meaning if I can't satisfy her desires, someone else undoubtedly will. There was no tenderness or closeness in this meeting, just dark, desperate, and even primal energy. As soon as she reached the end, the immediate desire was to take a shower, which I did. Unfortunately, her feelings were hurt, and they would have been hurt even more if I had rejected her. I'm not sure this outcome can be considered a victory for me. I apologize for clouding the mood, but I am deeply disappointed in myself and our situation now. Sharing my thoughts here brings me some comfort. Growing up, my father instilled in me that a man should silently cope with his problems and fulfill his duties, as no one cares about our emotional well-being. We are valued only for our usefulness. Perhaps it's not surprising he passed away at such a young age. After the incident I described, an awkward tension lingered in our family. To avoid this discomfort, I intentionally kept my presence to a minimum, thanks to my daily routine, including work and gym classes. Additionally, my daughter and I found solace in our shared passion for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, spending a significant amount of time together in the gym, where events were held every evening, on weekdays, and Sunday afternoons. In early February, news of my mother's sister's pass away reached us. She lived in a neighboring state and left behind cherished family photos, looms, and personal belongings important to my mother. Without hesitation, I offered to make the trip to pick up these valuable items. The agreement was made about 3 weeks ago, and my wayward wife and I were planning to make the trip together last weekend. On Friday, as we were getting ready for work, I reminded her of our plans for the Sunday trip and volunteered to go alone, despite the long journey of over 4 hours each way. Even though I assured her I could handle it, I brought up my past experience with such a trip. She expressed a desire to go, but I convinced her everything was fine and suggested she probably had more interesting ways to spend Sunday. Yet, she insisted on accompanying me and said she didn't mind coming along. I stressed that I wanted her to join me, but emphasized it was ultimately her decision whether to stay home or join the trip. In response, I made it clear I wanted her to come with me. I didn't want her to go, not because I didn't want her to, but because I understood it would be an unpleasant experience for her. So, on Sunday morning, I woke up early, ensuring my mother could take care of our daughter for the whole day. Once everything was settled, I returned home for my wife, ready to hit the road. The first hour of the ride passed in silence, as she had just woken up and doesn't like to talk in the morning. Eventually, we stopped for breakfast, refreshed ourselves with some coffee, and began a conversation mostly about our daughter and work. Then, the conversation took an unexpected turn. It was casual, consisting of small talk, and nothing extraordinary. Suddenly, she inquired about Mike's well-being. Not being aware of his current situation, I admitted my ignorance, which puzzled her, given our close friendship. I explained that I hadn't met with him since our last get-together for drinks a few months ago. Perplexed, she asked if there was any specific incident causing our separation. I clarified that it was simply both of us being busy with our lives, making communication difficult. Despite my efforts to shift the conversation, she refused to back down. She started criticizing me, stating that I didn't support a friend and expressing disappointment about my absence during his tough times. She insisted that his difficulties stemmed from his wife's infidelity and the upcoming divorce. Though I sensed tension rising, I managed to contain it. Instead, I calmly told her I no longer wanted to continue the conversation and drowned out her words by playing my music podcast. Deep down, I knew this conversation was unavoidable and had to happen. I've always been better at expressing my thoughts in writing than speaking off the cuff. To prepare for this conversation, I actively participated in online discussions, which proved helpful. Additionally, I maintain a diary where I jot down questions I need answers to and articulate my thoughts for the audience. Despite my stubbornness, the invaluable advice I've received from everyone here has genuinely influenced me. Without hesitation, I decided to lower the stereo system's volume. I shared my meeting with Mike, explaining that his wife, like me, encouraged him to live separately. I emphasized that infidelity unfortunately became common in marriage, leading him to think his reaction was exaggerated. I conveyed that there was some truth in his wife's viewpoint, suggesting that staying with a cheater unwittingly normalizes betrayal. Furthermore, I opined that it would be crucial for his wife to witness the consequences my wife faced after losing her marriage. Perhaps she wouldn't have taken the action she did. I also mentioned that Mike's divorce and our conversation brought back painful memories, making me reflect on her infidelity and our marriage. She reacted with anger and defensiveness, criticizing Mike and objecting again to me calling her relationship with a colleague treason. Trying to avoid a difficult discussion, I advised her to disregard this issue, expressing regret for bringing it up and suggesting we focus on the beauty of trees and flowers. In response, I turned on the radio again, and we endured about 30 minutes of awkward silence. Eventually, she seemed to calm down, apologized, and expressed a desire to talk. Reluctantly, I agreed, allowing her to continue the conversation. Her first question was whether I still loved her, and I honestly admitted that I was not sure. She claimed to know about my feelings for her. Curious, I asked how she could be sure when I couldn't figure it out myself. She said that love is an action, not just a feeling. She feels my love because I am devoted to our family. I am a devoted father, faithfully fulfilling my duties every day, even receiving her during our separation. Even in the toughest times, she trusted me infinitely. When she needed me, she knew she could rely on me without hesitation. Being next to me, she felt confident for herself and our daughter. She believed that all my actions stemmed from love, and if she felt I loved her, she considered it genuine affection. She asked if I believed she loved me, and I confidently replied that I knew what she loved. I admitted that her life would probably be easier if she decided to leave, and love would be the driving force behind her decision. I wondered why she chose to stay despite putting our family at risk during the betrayal. I couldn't understand how she could claim to love me and still behave that way. I expressed my doubts, suggesting that something might be lacking in me, making her seek connections with another person. I was puzzled why she never raised these issues with me, stressing that she should have ended the relationship, not changed. This upset her, and she emphatically stated that leaving had not even been considered by her. She loved me very much, but I couldn't grasp how consistent and logical her words were. I wondered why she would enter a relationship with another man if she wasn't dissatisfied. I questioned if I hadn't given her enough attention to make her feel wanted and loved. Though she assured me I did nothing wrong, she admitted that in our long-term relationship, she began taking these aspects for granted. In this situation, I might have done these actions for her out of a sense of duty or obligation. She also expressed uncertainty about our relationship, mentioning that she always noticed attention from other women. It made her feel inferior, as if she didn't have a special place in my life. She believed that without her presence, I would have had many alternatives. This fact attracted her to a partner much older than us, short and bald, with a big belly, completely opposite to me in appearance. She mentioned seeing photos of his wife, an average middle-aged woman, normal but not particularly attractive compared to her. My wife, younger and more attractive, felt she had a special place in his heart. Thanks to his undivided attention, she felt incredibly confident and valuable. She found great pleasure in the intense, almost obsessive desire he felt for her. She understood she was the only one causing such strong emotions in him. It had an intoxicating effect on her, almost like a potent substance. My curiosity got the best of me, and I asked if she had any suspicions about my loyalty. Surprisingly, she firmly denied any concerns, trusting my loyalty and devotion, believing I wouldn't betray her. However, when I dated other women during our breakup, her perception drastically changed, leading to a violent reaction. I questioned why I wasn't deserving of the same loyalty. She insisted she was loyal and devoted, stressing she would never change, but I reminded her of messages planning a physical relationship during a company event. To my surprise, she dismissed it, claiming to boost his ego, and the company wouldn't send her this year. She did it to support his faith and ensure a constant flow of attention. Curious, I asked if she was attracted to him. She grinned and denied it. Expressing my confusion, I explained her statement seemed contradictory. In response, She compared her SMS relationship to the man's use of explicit content to boost energy levels. There's enthusiasm and anticipation around her and his partner, indicating a strong bond, but it doesn't mean a lack of love. This contrasts with someone discussing their love partner, feeling cheerful and inspired by attention. As a result, her connection with me became even more pleasant. This made me reflect on how intense our relationship was. Before day, she talked about her feelings with great enthusiasm. According to her, this connection played a crucial role in boosting her self-esteem. She made it clear that her relationship with him had nothing to do with these feelings. It became obvious that these were the very problems she diligently addressed in therapy. However, I've never turned to a therapist because it's always been a difficult topic for me. Mental health problems were common in my father's family, who suffered from serious illnesses. Despite his condition, he managed to function well most of the time, experiencing occasional bouts of delirium. In contrast, his mother's condition was much more severe, leading to repeated placements in psychiatric clinics. Witnessing how his mother was subjected to extremely cruel and inadequate care, my father developed a distrust of mental health professionals. As a child of a father who feared doctors and hospitals, I also developed a deep-rooted distrust of mental health professionals. The constant worry that my father would be suddenly separated from his family during bouts of illness filled me with anxiety. Fortunately, I managed to avoid the same problems that my father and grandmother had. Having passed the age when symptoms usually appear, I became more inclined to ignore emerging signs. I decided to abandon the idea of marriage counseling after one meeting with 2 psychotherapists left me extremely uncomfortable. Now, I don't know how to overcome the emotional burden I carry. Perhaps therapy could be beneficial, but I'm afraid my spouse can only share what's beneficial to her. It's a dilemma. When we arrived at our destination, we started packing my aunt's belongings. Spending time with my uncle has become a routine, but there's always a strange feeling when sorting out someone's things after they pass away. The first time I felt this was when my father passed away. It struck me that all their possessions remained, but they were no longer there. Their whole life fit into objects, many of which might seem insignificant to us, but were important to them. Unfortunately, we'll never grasp the reasons for their attachments. In a somber atmosphere, we returned home, reflecting on the challenging process of sorting out my aunt's things, going over our detailed conversation, feeling its weight, exhausted by the long day. We delved into our relationship and contemplated seeking marriage counseling. Despite my doubts, I promised her to seriously consider this idea. I'm unsure how to interpret the details of her affair and the person involved. Should I trust her story? And even if I do, will it bring me any comfort or upset me more? I'm not sure yet. Our conversation went deeper than before, and driving played a role, allowing us to open up without looking into each other's eyes. It was almost like being in a confession booth. Opening up about some problems seems more pleasant. Maybe this will help us move forward, whether it strengthens the marriage or leads to a breakup. Nevertheless, it's progress, and I find encouragement in the fact that we both persevered through the discomfort. I managed not to withdraw, a positive step. She overcame her defensive attitude, which had hindered our conversations in the past. I may have contributed to her tendency to downplay some issues. I'm not saying her act wasn't serious. It does jeopardize the relationship. However, in my view, Mike's wife's infidelity was much more severe. She had an affair with a mutual friend they spent time with, a friend her husband also considered close. Throughout the story, it was clear she repeatedly had an affair with her partner, even within their shared home and bed. Reflecting on it, I admitted that if my wife had shown even a fraction of such disrespect, I would have ended the relationship quickly. I firmly believe that if she had taken their relationship beyond the virtual space, I would have left without hesitation. This part of the conversation troubled me, but I commend my wife's courage for reporting the affair to HR, given the company policy against fraternization. I also informed the other person's spouse that I would take action if she didn't, stressing the importance of proper behavior to delay the divorce process. I'm not sure how much credit is due to her, but the unfaithful wife eventually quit her job after the situation became public. Otherwise, she might have faced dismissal, though it's doubtful considering her experience and professional mentor role. However, this would have caused complications and led to his dismissal. Apparently, the betrayed spouse also decided to divorce him, and my wife and I are working on preserving our family, gradually rebuilding our faithful and spiritual connections.